vote on September the 18th this year, as with every decision in anyone's life, is connected to all previous decisions, experiences, relationships that have come before. And so what follows is a personal history of sorts. Let's begin on the 18th of June in 1979, when I was born, to a woman who had left the Isle of Lewis in 1963 at the age of 17 to begin her life's work as a teacher, journeying from Glasgow to Zambia and beyond. She gave birth to me in Adelaide, Australia, and 2 weeks later flew me and my older brother to Papua New Guinea to join my father, an Australian of French, Scottish and English ancestry. 4 years later, my father's work moved us to Jakarta, Indonesia, which would be my main home for the next 14 years. Jakarta, Indonesia, where our family, as most expatriate families do, employed a pembantu, a helper, an additional member of the family, a member of staff, a servant, a man with a family of 12 children living 11 or so hours away by train, a man who was available to feed me and care for me 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, a man called Tarsid, whose surname I never knew. Most summers, my mum would take my brother and my older brother and me to the Isle of Lewis to stay with her parents. We would trample across the Barvis Moor, climb over the Callanish stones and the Carloway Broch, race over the Valtos dunes, convinced that Viking ships would land at any moment and take me captive. And at night, we would drive home to Stornoway, where the swings were chained on Sundays, and I would wake at 4 a.m, missing the sound of the mosque call to prayer. As a child, my nightly routine often involved a makeshift Hindu shrine, praying to God and to Allah, crossing myself multiple times, chanting Om and blowing kisses to the air above and around me just in case. In 1988, my mother, brother and I spent a year in rural Queensland, where us kids lined up outside school every morning to sing, "Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free," followed promptly by, "God save our gracious." A few years later, back at the British International School in Jakarta, I remember a classroom teacher holding a mock election. "Which colour do you like? Blue, red or yellow?" "Why can't I choose green?" "Green isn't an option." "But Indonesians can choose green." "That's an Islamic party. We're British. We don't have parties like that. We have blue, red or yellow. Which colour do you like?" "I like the colour green." In 1992, my dad came out and moved in with his boyfriend. And in 1996, he took an aid job in East Timor, still then a part of Indonesia, but with an active separatist guerrilla movement. My brother and I visited him there in East Timor, driving through its napalmed landscapes. But why did they bomb them? Because they wanted to be independent. So why do they want to be independent again? Well, some people have never not wanted to be independent. And so I suppose this time they're hoping things will be different. But why? Because Indonesia is diverse. It holds many different peoples with many different languages, beliefs, religions and cultures. Because one single government located in the most populous area cannot make decisions in the best interests of everyone in such a diverse nation. And because the government is corrupt, nepotistic and elitist. So, is that why they bombed them? I suppose so. Do they hate them? I think they love them. And in 1997, at almost 18 years old, I left home in Indonesia and moved out on my own to go to drama school in London, where I was told that my job as an actress was to speak other people's words and to leave my own at home. Opinions are so unladylike. I left drama school in 2000, physically, if not intellectually and emotionally unscathed, and in 2001 I campaigned with many and marched with millions against an illegal war for oil under the guise of weapons of mass destruction. A year later, East Timor voted for independence from Indonesia, and my brother went on the first of his many UN contracts there, aiding their long journey to becoming a sustainable new nation. Why does it take so long? When are you going to come back to visit? Independence isn't just something that happens overnight. It's a long and complicated process. Is that normal? Yes, it's completely normal. Chill the fuck out. And in 2006, I began my continuing relationship with an ever-changing community of people living in Glasgow under the asylum system. People who became some of my dearest friends. People who have been detained, dawn raided, evicted and made homeless. People who have been deported, who have jumped from windows to avoid deportation. People who have made their homes here, who have fallen in love here, who have had their children here, who have been welcomed by their surrounding communities and who have welcomed me into their homes and into their hearts. And also in that year, my brother died and everything changed. And in 2007, I moved to Scotland, which is now my home, and which now, in 2014, has the opportunity to vote for independence. And yes, I consider myself a Scottish person voting in this referendum. But I also consider myself an Australian person, and French, and English. I am a child of the British Empire, moulded and formed by the cultures, religions and languages of East Timor, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea and many other cultures and languages besides. And I am voting yes. And that yes is not informed by an idea of patriotism to the nation of Scotland. It is instead informed by every single moment, every experience, every relationship that has come before. So I am saying yes. Yes, for my mother. Yes, for my mother who, as a little Yowasach, arrived at school one term to discover that Gaelic was no longer the language of the classroom, and she and her sister and friends would have to catch up fast. Because an independent Scotland could be a step towards greater cultural confidence for all of our minority cultures. I am saying yes for Tarsid, my Pembantu, my helper, my servant, who I love and who I miss, and who I wish I could tell that I feel deeply ashamed of the inequality in our relationship. And Scotland has its own colonial shame to come to terms with. And the clearest way we can begin to do that is by dismantling the institution of empire. I am saying yes. I am saying yes for the land that I played on during my summer holidays in Lewis, where the wind whipped my hair and the sea lashed the coast, because in an independent Scotland, we have more of a chance of seeing green and climate-aware policies at the heart of government than we do under Westminster. I am saying yes for the wee girl praying to everyone to whom the idea of multiple cultures living together seemed entirely normal, because an independent Scotland could be internationalist, outward-looking, multicultural, diverse and welcoming of difference. I am saying yes for the little kids who wondered why they had to sing God Save the Queen. Yes, because there are other options than blue, red or yellow. I am saying yes for my dad, who was unable for the majority of his life to fearlessly and openly say that he was gay. And Scotland will struggle to enforce its Equality Act if money and resources continue to be brutally cut by a Westminster government whose priority is profit over the rights of individual lives. And so my yes is to enshrine the rights of all minorities. Yes, for the young woman who arrived in London as a bright and eager young person and learned quickly that the world under capitalist patriarchy does not value my words and does not value myself. Because while the cuts made by the current Westminster government, which Labour have said they will not reverse, reinforce this imbalance by shamelessly promoting the male breadwinner model and cutting women's jobs, benefits and support and safety services, the sheer force and positive positivity of the women I know who are knocking on doors and standing on street corners campaigning for a yes vote has me convinced that an independent Scottish government would have no choice other than to consider the welfare of women in the formation of a new Scotland. And so my yes is for the welfare of all women, and therefore the welfare of all of us, because all of our health and happiness is interconnected. My yes is for the young activist who marched with millions shouting, "Not in my name." Yes, for the millions and millions of Iraqis, Afghanis, Iranians, and the list goes on, who have been killed in my name. Yes, to a more peaceable foreign policy, and yes, yes, to an end to Trident. Not least of all because it is kept an hour's drive from the city I live in, the biggest city in Scotland, the city of Glasgow. I am saying yes for East Timor. Yes, for every other country that has never been as fortunate as Scotland is to have the opportunity to gain independence by peaceful means. Yes, for my brothers and sisters who have been deported, who thought they were coming to a land where human rights were revered, where refuge would be offered and humanity respected. Because as much as I might wish it were not so, we live in a world of borders, and few new border control systems could be more brutal and more inhumane than the current system enforced by the United Kingdom Border Agency. And so my yes is for more open borders, and yes, yes, to close the detention centre Dungavel. Yes, for my big brother, who taught me that the only certainty in life is change. And the only certainty on that ballot paper is that both options will bring change. And so my yes is for positive change, because an independent Scotland could bring the decisions of what changes we make in our society away from the ruling classes and the super rich and closer to the hands of people like you and me. Yes, for the person that I will continue to be, who still has hope for a better, more equal, more humane and more sustainable Scotland and world. Yes, for the children I will have soon, who only in an independent Scotland would have guaranteed continued access to free education and healthcare. And yes, yes, I know that my yes will not by itself revert the climate crisis. It will not rescue us from capitalism. It will not rid Scotland of racism and bigotry, but it just might be one step in a long and complicated journey towards a Scotland with an internationalist outlook, somewhere welcoming of multiculturalism and diversity, somewhere at peace, somewhere defined by hope, somewhere where my children can continue to build a fairer and more equal and sustainable world for their children, and 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 theirs, and theirs, and theirs, and theirs.
The wonderful Julia Taudevin!